En estos momentos han abierto la primera puerta de esta estructura para controlar las inundaciones aquí en el estado de Luisiana. Esta estructura mide casi 1.500 metros en distancia y tiene 125 puertas por donde se puede escapar agua. En la última hora acaban de abrir la primera puerta y lo que se ve ahí es la fuerza tremenda con cual está saliendo toda esta agua. En minutos se ha llenado este campo, este terreno con agua, y ahora empieza el proceso de que esta agua se empieza a caminar unos 125 kilómetros hacia el sur, hacia el pueblo de Morgan City, Luisiana. Esto es un proceso que se va a demorar semanas en terminar, y va a terminar destruyendo varias comunidades pequeñas. Esto se tiene que hacer para proteger las ciudades de Baton Rouge y Nueva Orleans, donde el sistema de diques no puede aguantar la cantidad de presión y la cantidad de agua que tiene el río Mississippí en estos momentos, y por eso se tienen que abrir estas puertas para que el agua se pueda escapar del río y caminar por otro paso para ir al Golfo de México. Esto se va a demorar casi 2 semanas para llegar a los puntos tope de agua, y después se va a demorar unas 2 o 3 semanas para que el agua se termine de escapar al Golfo de México. La gente que están en camino de este agua van a estar luchando con estas inundaciones casi un mes. Lavandera, CNN, Morganza,
Here on the banks of
Louisiana.
Lake Ferguson, which is an offshoot of the Mississippi River, they are still waiting in Greenville for the crest to come, and that's not expected to happen until Monday. Right now, the water level is said to be at 64 feet. They believe the crest will be at 65 feet. The levee that's behind me is actually built to 75 feet, which means that even with the crest, they should be just fine. And in fact, most of the city of Greenville is absolutely fine. But there are some areas outside of the flood protection system that are really suffering, and that's what we had a look at thanks to the Washington County Sheriff's Department. We went up to take a look at Lower Lake Ferguson Drive. This is an area that stretches for about 3 to 5 miles along what normally is the banks of Lake Ferguson, but Lake Ferguson has greatly overflowed its banks. The roads and everything else have been covered by deep water there. In fact, if you take a look, you'll find it very difficult to even spot where the road is. Sometimes power lines, sometimes street lamps that are almost at water's level give you an indication. But then look at the homes. There are about 90 to 100 homes that are spread all along the distance there, and every single one of them appears to have suffered greatly from flood damage. Many of the homes have water that goes up to the roof line and beyond, but some of the homes appear to be almost all right, resting right at water's level. It's an illusion, because what you're really looking at are homes that are built on very long stilts, about 15 to 16 feet in the air. They built them that way, believing that no matter what kind of flood came, the homes would remain perfectly dry. This is a historic flood, one of those you see once in a lifetime, if then. Even these homes suffered as a result of that. The damage is pretty extensive. But again, it is limited to that specific area here in Greenville. Elsewhere, for most people, they gather along the top of the levee, they bring their children, and they bring their cameras. Because even though this flood, as great as it is for most of them, is just an oddity, a photo op, they're fine. It's something to tell the kids about later.
They don't know exactly where this water is going to go. Thousands of people are going to be flooded. The governor has said, evacuate, evacuate, evacuate. It is heartbreak in Louisiana right now. This is what they're having to do to relieve pressure on a swollen levee system, a very taxed levee system, and they don't know if that levee system is going to hold even with this. They're being inundated with water. People who have dealt recently with tornadoes just a couple of weeks ago. And then, of course, Hurricane Katrina and Rita that hit the area and have done so much devastation to Louisiana. You can't take your eyes off these pictures. Imagine if this was happening in your community, this much water. Knowing your homes, your farms, your livelihood would be flooded. We're going to get to our players here. We've got Ed Lavandera on the ground. Ed is going to join us in a second. Look at the flooding. This is what's being flooded. This is all just moments ago. Once they started to release the pressure on the Morganza spillway and let that water out. Look at these levees. Water pouring across the levees. That's the Mississippi River there. Look at that. unbelievable. We're going to follow this breaking news story for you because we don't know what's going to happen here. We don't know how this is going to end up. They don't even know if this is going to actually relieve all the pressure and help that stressed levee system in Louisiana, which has been inundated with so much water and so much heartache. Our Jennifer Delgado, our meteorologist, is also here as well. We're going to get to her in a moment. I want to go to the ground now, and my colleague Ed Lavandera for this breaking news. This is historic. These floodgates have not been opened, Ed, since the 1970s, and as we say, heartbreak. Show us what's happening where you are.
Well, 1973 to be exact, Don, and this is just one of the gates. And to give you a sense, just a little while ago, we were standing down here where you see these gates on the ground here, and that water has already here in the last few minutes already taken all of that over. We just had a chance, Don, to walk over on top of the Morganza spillway structure and kind of stand over that gate and get a sense of watching that water. And I tell you, this vantage point is impressive, but when you stand over it and see how wide and how powerful the water is rushing through just that one gate, it really is impressive. Now, where we're standing, the water begins the long, slow process of making its way toward the Gulf of Mexico, and with it, a lot of heartache and pain for the many people who live in the communities that will be in the direct path of these floodwaters, towns like Butte, La Rose, Stephenville, and down into Morgan City, so they'll be watching this closely. We are about 45 miles north of Interstate 10, and officials say here that it will take about a full day for a lot of this water to make it to Interstate 10, but we don't anticipate any road closings or anything. The interstate over that part of Louisiana is suspended over the swamps and the water over there, so that water will go underneath there, and then it will take about 3 days to get to Morgan City. And as you mentioned off the top, this is all about the pressure on the levee system along the Mississippi River between Baton Rouge and Louisiana. Anything over 1.5 million cubic feet of second of water is just simply too much for the levee system to handle, can really cause problems, and it could be devastating for those levees. So they had to relieve one of the pressure off that. The colonel here, who's in charge of the Army Corps of Engineers and made the decision of opening this up, describes this as an off-ramp of the Mississippi River Highway, and this is one of the few places where water can come off the river, and even though it's got to go through this river basin, it makes its way to the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, Don.
Hey, Ed, let me jump in there. I don't want you to go far away because we're going to come right back to you. Our Ed Lavandera is right there in Louisiana, right where it's happening at Morganza. Ed, stand by because you mentioned the Army Corps of Engineers. I want to go on the phone now to Ed Fleming of the U.S. Army Corps. Colonel, I know it's a difficult decision to open the Morganza Spillway after nearly 40 years of not having to use it, and the heartbreak for people who know they're going to get flooded.
Yeah, you know, the amount of water that is coming down the Mississippi River all the way from Cairo, Illinois, down through the state of Louisiana is record-setting, and we operate this as a system, and this is one of those off-ramps that Ed just mentioned, and we operated it starting today, and we think there's a successful operation going on right now.
Hey, just listen, I've been telling our viewers here, Colonel, that this is an exact science. There are about 2,500 people in direct path of the spillway, and then there are around 22,500 others who are threatened by the swollen backwaters. The governor has urged people remaining in these areas to begin evacuating. You really don't know how many people this is going to affect, do you?
Well, you know, we have a sense of how many people will be impacted, but you know, there are some of those folks that you mentioned that live behind the levee, and there are some communities that have ring levees around them, and so they should be okay. We're also undertaking a flood fight with the city of Morgan City and some of the other local levee districts. So we're doing the best we can up here to relieve the pressure on the Mississippi River, but we're also down in Morgan City and Amelia and Berwick flood fighting with HESCOs and sandbags and pumps, doing the best we can to support them.
Yeah, and